welcome to another video on the JayBee and Milly channel. Today we are going to be reviewing episode 2 of season 1 of Scooby Doo and Guess Who?
Yeah.
Which is a mystery solving gang divided.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, great. I'm ticking boxes at the minute. I'm getting things right. Okay, good. So, JayBee, what's your thoughts on this? We're doing a plot summary. Do you want to just kind of dive straight into it?
So, I need to preface this. We'll do what we did last time where we will touch on who the guest is of this episode of Guess Who and our background behind it. I want to apologise for our primarily American audience because when it comes to...
Do you mean 4 or 2?
Well, both. Because when it comes to my history and my knowledge of American history and American politics, I literally know absolutely nothing.
He literally knows who Donald Trump is. That's not too far from the truth.
No, well, my knowledge of Abraham Lincoln honestly all comes from Night at the Museum too. Like, when we were watching this...
Honest Abe.
And I was like, oh, he's the guy that sits on the chair in Night at the Museum too and helps Ben Stiller defeat Ivan the Awesome. So, I do apologise for that. So, there is something that I do get wrong. Then, you know, it is what it is, and I do apologise. But Milly, I mean, because this is an interesting one, because this is a historic guest and not like, you know, a celebrity as such or a character. What is your knowledge of the generality behind Abraham Lincoln?
I don't really know anything either.
I mean, you know that he was a president. Yeah. So that's kind of where we're coming at from this perspective. And to be honest, from what I remembered of this episode, I was expecting the people in the flashlight to be like the Funky Phantom crew. That's what I thought was going to be like the guest cameo.
But they try and have a real guest and the Funky Phantom crew aren't real.
Yeah, but will is Sherlock real? I guess he will.
Okay, we'll get into that in the Sherlock episode. Abraham Lincoln's the guest.
Okay.
Plot summary, or do we dive into
No, we're diving. There's no plot. You should remember, we recorded the first episode.
Yeah, but the first one's
2
different
days ago.
because it's your initial impressions on the entire series. Like, the first time you see the art style and everything. Anyway, so, my first thing with this is, you know when you get that initial pan into scene, you get the corner of a sign... There's a certain palette colour. It is the palette colour that they use for Oakhaven in Witch's Ghost. 100%. And I think it's back to that. They're trying to make friends, not enemies. And they're giving you lots of things that's very similar to stuff we've already seen. So the colour palette and how the trees and everything looked, it sounds ridiculous, but I was in Oakhaven straight away. And also, JayBee and I had a conversation about this off camera, but the villains in this look like they could almost be affiliated with Zombie Island.
Yeah, and to the point where I won't spoil too much, but we had a closer look at some of these villains, and we were literally thinking at the time maybe there was a Return to Zombie Island type thing planned for this series that ultimately went to DTV, and that's why there was a scrapped Morgan Moonscar design and like stuff like that. Now, obviously, in context, because of my lack of US knowledge, I do think that there was something in Zombie Island where some of the ghosts were Confederate soldiers, is it? I think the one that salutes Shaggy in the mirror is like a Confederate soldier. And so if you are staying consistent with the costumes and look of a Confederate soldier, it would bleed across naturally anyway. But it still was interesting that they paired them up with a very Morgan Moonscar-y looking person as well.
I can see what you're saying. I think it predominantly is just they're trying to make friends with the audience, as opposed to foes. And they're trying to give you that familiarity. So that's the kind of, I guess, initial first
Can I be
cold
somewhat
open.
controversial?
Oh, please do. I like disagreeing with you.
I think that so far this may be a very decent series for Americans. But so far, you think about it, right? Basketball is a thing here, obviously, but I don't think we have a major basketball team, do we? Like, or at least it isn't televised the way it is in the US. Like, ours is mostly football, like rugby, cricket,
tennis.
So we've had episode 1 have a famous basketball player, episode 2 a former US president. So far, there's not really been a guest so early on that has been, oh, everyone's going to know them, even if it is someone of historic fiction. And of course, you know, if I was a normally educated person, I'd probably know more about Abraham Lincoln. But you know what I mean? Like, in terms of targeted demographic, it is very US centric, which I'm not saying is a bad thing. But in terms of getting on board with a new series, I don't know how wise that was.
See, I have to agree with you, but I also think that there is no real push to keep Scooby alive in the UK. Like, how often do we get the coal merchant stuff over here? Barely ever. And to be fair, didn't you find something historical about like how Scotland had to petition to keep Scooby Doo like back in the day?
Oh yeah.
So like
yeah.
I don't think there's ever been as much of a requirement to keep Scooby alive in the UK. It's very much, I'd say, it's our generation and the generation above us who grew up watching it that are what's keeping it alive here, showing it to our kids, as opposed to Warner Brothers trying to push it onto their TV screens.
I mean, you could argue, really, that Scooby-Doo originated in the UK. And until we saw that documentary, I'd even want Enid Blyton to be a guest star. But tangents aside, that was kind of my point about that. Now, moving on a little bit, we have a ghost appearing and the introduction of... And I heard this as the phony Phantom Crew at first, on this watch through. When I first watched it, like before this, I didn't really hone in on the full episode, but I actually heard the effing Phantom. Like, I'm not going to say the word, but you know what I mean? I heard the effing Phantom the first time. But it is the funky Phantom Crew. What do you make of these characters, Miller?
I thought they were trying to be the speed buggy people. So when they turned up at the end, what the heck are you doing? Like, this is a headache, and halfway through this episode, I came up with a plot that I liked better. And when we get to where I thought of that, I will elaborate on it. But what I think they were doing with this, again, I think it's all about that making friends. So they tried to make it look, or at least have some call to the speed buggy crew thing, right? And also, if you look at them, especially the girl, it's a lot closer to that original art style. Their art style looks older. They don't look like they fit in this scene and in this art style. They look like they belonged 20 years ago in the art style. So I think it was very much trying to make friends again, like that feeling of you recognise this art style, you recognise a group in a car like this. One thing that is confusing to me is that Ghost arrived at exactly the same time. So initially it was like, are they part of their crew or are they an individual of their own?
Yeah, I think it was a bit interesting because I know a little bit about them, but only based on what we know from the channel and what I've seen on Twitter and stuff. Like, I didn't grow up watching these funky phantoms or effing phantoms, whatever they are. This whole crew I'm not really familiar with, but I did appreciate that in absence of introducing them, and maybe that would have been better, but it would have been way more time consuming. It would have halted the plot. They just water it down to making it a kind of meta commentary on the concept of Scooby Doo clones. So, you know, Goober and the Ghost Chasers, you know, basically Hanna-Barbera found a winning formula with group of teenagers and mascots of mysteries, and they replicated that all throughout that 60s, 70s era to the point now where it can go, you know, like the Spider-Man meme, like, they basically just spend like 5 minutes doing that here, so we can go, we don't need to know that the redhead is the smart one. It's, oh, that's the Velma equivalent, so of course he's going to be smart. We don't need to know that the rough and ready lad is the leader because, oh, he pairs up with Fred, so you know what I mean. And I kind of like that shorthand, although I do think it's possibly a bit of a simplification.
I guess it fit well, but I do have a better plot than, I don't know, you're going to disagree with me being a better plot. There's something I'd preferred to have seen. So for me personally, you know, like the big line here is a house divided. They're not a house. They've never met each other before. Do you expect them to be best friends instantly? Maybe not. Maybe, and also, was it not confusing to add different characters? Because when we get to the unmasking at the end, I'm like, who on earth are you? I've never seen you before, have I? And apparently we had, but they were rushing to build up this other group so much that it was skimmed over who this person was, and the unmasking had very little gravitas to it. It was like, oh, okay, I don't know who you are, fine. I personally would have said, for the line, a house divided, the gang should be divided. And a lot of people don't like seeing that, but for me, we've seen it done before where, like, Scooby and Shaggy are sick of being the bait and, not feeling integrated. So they decide they want to go off on their own and solve the mystery. The other three, do as they do. That's why the map got ripped. You could have it exactly the same way because Shaggy and Scooby were trying to prove a point, but Velma thinks she knows best. And they come back together because they are the house. They are already together. Because that's the line they were playing off of. And you can't compare two groups of people that have never met each other to a house.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. Because obviously, like you say, it's like just a play on words. It's mystery solving, gang divided. But the one that it originated from, as you say, the house, it's like, say if we were getting along, but we weren't necessarily getting along with our neighbours, that isn't a house divided. That, you're right, that's two houses against each other. But I think you're right, they could have done something a little bit into that. Like, I kind of think of, do you remember 22 Jump Street?
Yes.
Where Buff Channing Tatum and Little Jonah Hill, they weren't getting along because, Channing Tatum got with the other football lad, and because they were so similar, he thought, why am I messing around dealing with this conflict when I've got like a clone of me that I can then go and friend off with. I think it would have been cool to see Fred, Daphne and Velma go like you could have Velma like, I'm the smart one, why do I have to spend all this time explaining this when I could pair off with the person in this crew and we could do smart things together. And they could have latched onto their similarities a bit more, and ultimately the end of the message would be kind of you need all aspects to make that group, or you can't always associate just with people that have your way of thinking or your way of doing stuff, because that's not really how things work. That definitely would have been a better message, but at the end of the day, like, would it have fit into the runtime? Would it have been not too high concept, but would there have been a way to do that and also make it that little short episode format?
Well, I guess not for building up the relationships you're talking about, but for it to just be the gang internally, definitely. Like I said, if Shaggy and Scooby were sick of being the bait again, have that brief break. We've seen Scooby do it so many times where Shaggy and Scooby go off on their own. That's more what I was referring to.
So would your vision not include the Funky Phantom?
No, it wouldn't.
Because I was thinking that would work as well, but with the Funky Phantom, you could almost have them achieving more mystery solving success by not fighting. That then Mystery Inc. would go, clearly there's something we're doing wrong by arguing all the time. But
no, I wouldn't have even had them in there.
Well, it's Guess Who though. That's the thing, right? Like maybe for
Guess Who's Abe Lincoln. He can still be there. He's the ghost. He's the Guess Who.
Oh, he is the Guess Who.
I'm saying, if you want to make an episode around him and his line about houses, then make it about a house, a united group, which the Mystery Gang are, and then have them split and unite that house. Two different groups cannot under any circumstances really be seen as a house. It kind of implies that as soon as you meet somebody, you have to be such a united front with them, and it's certainly not the case.
Could it be almost oh gosh, this is not the right language for a Scooby Doo podcast, but could it almost be a quasi religious statement, as in not like everyone is your neighbour, so you have to get along with everyone? Like, it's not about your own self as your own entity getting along with your people. It's we are all people. We are all equal in the eyes of XYZ. So mystery solving gang, if we find someone, we have to collaborate with them, as opposed to we're right, no, we're right. Like, it could almost be that. Maybe not religious, maybe that was the wrong word, but all together as one.
To me, that second group didn't add anything to the plot. A fair enough episode could have been made without them there. They just confused matters. I didn't like them. And can we talk for a minute about how annoying that ghost was? It was making me very angry.
I like the ghost.
Like, all it kept saying is, don't you know. All I knew is that I wanted it to shut up. I genuinely was getting angry listening to it.
Look, I was more getting bad flashbacks in terms of annoyance to Velma going on about how the ghost must be fake.
Yes, we are getting onto that next.
The ghost didn't bother me too much. It was more Velma. I wanted them to put her in a cannon and blast her off somewhere, like Team Rocket or something.
There was a scene when you see her through the cannon and I was like, woo, do it. But they didn't. But, no, the ghost, its voice sounded familiar to me. And I can't think why. I think the Cowardly Lion from The Wizard of Oz was coming to mind, but I can't think why. I was kind of pairing it with that. but it was so painfully annoying. Honestly, it's worse than Kate Micucci. It was the worst thing about that episode. Although I have to admit it, like you were saying, her going, where's the projector? Oh, how do you unmask it? All the time was like just so annoying as well. It was like the 13 Ghosts all over again. It was awful.
It must just be like direction, because like, and you know me, I've never been a simp for example, a Velma or a Linda Cardellini. But at no point watching Linda Cardellini explain to Nagita Una where the projectors were was I annoyed. I think it must just be the voice. I don't know. Because like, on one hand, there's a Velma in the multiverse explaining about the projection on Zombie Island. I'm kind of like, oh, what a smart cookie you are. And then another time, I'm literally wanting to blast her off into like space.
I think it's about like the repetition of it, because with Velma and how she did it then, like with this, it's always like, hey, that has to be an act, and it's nasally and it's annoying. Whereas with Linda Cardellini, she said it with confidence. There was a little bit of humour to it. It's how she delivered that line that I liked. Because I do like that line. I like how she delivers it. It's kind of like that kind of know-it-all, but in a really self-assured way, as opposed to a, I'm better than everyone else. Like, yeah, I hate Kate Micucci's
To be fair, and even then she gets patronised, like, aren't you a smart little one, or whatever he says.
Yeah, and that kind of counterbalances it, whereas Kate Micucci has been left to squeak for too long, and I don't like it. I genuinely hate it. And I think just for her to keep going on about it, as soon as we saw a ghost in this episode, mentally I went, oh no, here we go. And it was so bad. Like, they need to draw a line. They either leave ghosts out of it completely because they can't deal with it being possibly real, or they can have ghosts in it, but they need to allow them to be, because they didn't fully resolve it at the end of this, did they? They weren't like we did unmask it. It was left to just be. So leave it to just be. Don't have the need to make us so annoying. Because honestly, when that cannon was pointed at her, I was cheering. I was ready for it to be fired.
But I can kind of defend them from a point of view of, if we are using Mystery Inc. as shorthand to also explain the Funky Phantom crew, I guess you need to dial up all their quirks to 11 in a way. So we had to have Fred being like, let's stick up for the Mystery Machine and stuff like that. Like, if you're going to be stereotypical Velma, you would maybe lean into that a bit more, but yeah, I don't know.
I disagree with you. I don't think they pushed the quirks that hard, because Fred's always loved the Mystery Machine and made comments about it, and some of the words that Velma was using you could have ripped straight out of Curse of the 13th Ghost.
Oh, stop it.
One of her lines was crazy ghost effects. You can imagine her saying that in there. It wasn't an exacerbation of her character. It was just the pure awful annoyance that is Kate Micucci Velma.
It was swamp gas.
It was terrible.
Swamp gas.
And like I said, we do get to the unmasking, and then it's like, who's that? There's been so much time spent elsewhere that I don't even know who this person is.
I mean, I don't understand a lot of the stuff that goes on. Again, this could be like Britishness, but the whole premise around, I understand that the ghost / the culprit wants gold, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's pretty obvious. Like, I don't think I could meet a person alive now that doesn't want gold. But then I don't understand all the need for the Civil War background and stuff if in the end Lincoln is just the Funky Phantom. Because it's like, again, I don't know what the Civil War is. Is it like the Republicans versus the Democrats? I don't know. I really don't know.
What they used with that war is they said that they were paid in that gold, and that gold had gone missing.
They got paid in gold to do a war.
Yes.
I would do that.
And it was that went missing.
We didn't get paid. Well, like, the British didn't get. Did the British get paid in the World War?
I don't know. Anyway.
Definitely not in gold.
And then, so there's the unmasking, and Speed Buggy turns up at the end, and that to me was just reiterating that tick box exercise of like, we need to do this to make them like us, this to make them like us, like the colour palette we use.
So I would disagree with that, actually.
Style. Like, okay,
I
tell
don't
me
think
what
this
purpose
is
they
tick
had.
boxy. I just think because if you want to tick boxes, you're going to assume that you're pandering to fans of classic Hanna-Barbera, for instance. So if you're just watching this as a kid or as the parent of someone that grew up on the Scooby Doo show, obviously they've made appearances here and there in the new Scooby Doo movies and whatnot, but generally speaking, if you're only a pure Scooby Doo fan, like just Scooby Doo, you're not going to know who either of those groups are.
No, but if you were born this side of the 21st century, if you were born after the turn of the millennium, right, you are not going to know who Speed Buggy is.
That's exactly what I just said.
No, you were saying as pure Scooby fans, you might not fully know.
That's what I just said.
Like,
so it's not a tick box if you have to be a certain genre of person to know who they are. It's an in-joke. I almost think it was reverse. I know that a lot of people that watch this will know, but I just think for general audiences that would be alienating. So if I picked this up without doing the channel or any of that, I would be so lost. Not even just with the American stuff. Like they could have said it in the UK, had it about War of the Roses, had the guest be Winston Churchill, but all those other guest stars, I would be lost.
Okay.
So I don't know.
So my point on this is that it's still that making friends with the hardcore fans that are more likely to know because it's very kind of earlier Hanna-Barbera stuff. So for me, that served no purpose. They threw it in at the end. They didn't need to be there. It was just so people could be like, I know those guys. That was the only reason.
Do you reckon Abraham Lincoln was tick boxy? Because I think to myself, is there one historic political figure in, say, British history that would go down well for? Because I think about people that are the most divisive and hated right now, and it is politicians. Like, is Abraham Lincoln, and maybe this is a question for the comment section to the Americans listening, is Abraham Lincoln just untouchable? Like, is he, and I've got no problem if he is he a genuinely agreed upon good bloke?
It wasn't, they were saying like Honest Abe or something, like he is meant to be that guy.
Whereas I could imagine, the famous five and Guess Who meets Margaret Thatcher. Like, that would be so divisive. That would be
controversial. But I think, typically, people in the UK, we seem to be a little bit more critical.
Well, Churchill... Like, maybe it's Churchill.
Okay.
It's Churchill or Lincoln.
I'd say they were as close as we get.
I mean, Churchill said some mad things about the Indians, but he ultimately did great stuff.
Like you said, there is still elements. He said things that perhaps were acceptable at the time that are not acceptable now, that perhaps may be seen in a wrong light. If you look at shows like The Crown, they kind of portrayed him as somebody that just wasn't able to let go and was hiding things to bring the UK down. Obviously, he achieved some fantastic things in his career.
I mean, I didn't mean to bring it up as like a weird topic, but I'm just thinking if it is like a tick box, let's appeal to everyone, it would be worrying to me if I was, say, a network head and it's like, oh, the second guest is going to be a politician.
I'd be like, no. Let's leave that one where it is.
Yeah, so I don't know about that. Please let me know in the comment section about Abraham Lincoln, because if there is genuinely a political figure without controversy that's very beloved, that's awesome.
To me, the title Guess Who, it actually applies to this episode though, because it is like a guess who the guest is, because there's so many people. Like, you have Abraham Lincoln, you have the second crew, you have the speed buggy people turn up. It's like, who is it? Like, who's the guest here? You actually find yourself asking who is meant to be this centre point, and I'm just not getting it. I'm not enjoying it. Yeah, JayBee, smash or pass?
Okay, so I think, all things considered, I think this is a smash for me, but I think it is teetering on pass. This is definitely, for me personally, I didn't enjoy it nearly as much as episode 1. I think episode 1 is a lot, maybe more simple, but it's also more accessible. I think you also can follow the mystery further without getting bogged down with a lot of the other stuff. This, I think I enjoyed it enough to go, okay, I would watch that again, you know. I wouldn't be against putting it on. But at the same time, because I notice it is so much less to me personally and more confusing to me personally, I definitely don't enjoy it as the number one. So this one is definitely a lighter smash. One more thing out of line with this episode, I think it would have been a pass. But I think it does enough to get that smash in this instance. What about you? I think I can tell.
I hated it. I absolutely despised it, and I'm never going to watch it again. It was absolutely terrible. I didn't get through this episode without swearing. JayBee had to edit it. It was that bad I was getting angry. Like, Velma is so annoying.
I think you should recant your request to get that edited out, because we can do it.
No. Velma was so annoying. She was genuinely the epitome of why I hate Velma, because I do. Like, they shouldn't have ghosts in it if they're not prepared to make her somebody that's not a whiny, squeaky, annoying, existing thing. So she was annoying. The ghost that kept saying, "Don't you know," was so annoying. And the plot just was terrible. Like, I get if you want to centre it around one particular line in history, but, like, make it applicable. There was no house here. Like, if it had been the gang, maybe it was a bit more relatable. You're assuming that we know who the freaky phantom group are or whatever it was. I just thought they'd been created for this episode. To me, it was terrible.
Did you remember the Mystery Solvers? No, what is it? The Mystery Solvers State Final?
No.
Did you actually not? Oh no, because you didn't need to rewatch that with me, did you? Because I do apologize, because that was one that I had to rewatch for the Victor Cook interview.
Right. Well, and anyway, regardless, this is okay. I'm gonna say it. This episode was was comparable to, like, how annoying Velma is as a series. Like, it was that level of bad for me.
Do you think whoever wrote it needs fired?
No. No. But I do think it was bad.
I actually don't know who wrote it.
To me, I'm disappointed, because I actually would go as far as to say I enjoyed episode 1. I saw what they were trying to achieve. Whereas this was like an amalgamation of trying to do what they were doing before, which was to get back to old core Scooby, but trying to slip in elements of the newer stuff now, like with Velma being like, "What is all this, like, ghost technology?" Like,
oh my, that when the way you said technology, that actually kind of sounded eerily similar.
Yeah, like, no, it's awful. I hate it.
Stop.
So yeah, it's a definite pass. There is zero chance that I'm ever gonna watch this again.
I had fun with it. But I like that, because I think with a 2-person show, it's very easy to go, "Oh, I agree. So I think it's good that we've got, because I don't really love it. You know what I mean? I'm not a counterbalance, but I think I liked it a lot more. Oh no, yeah.
If I'm like, JayBee, let's watch an episode of Scooby, are you ever gonna watch this again?
Well, if we're doing a marathon, like, I wouldn't pick it out of a lineup, but there's a lot of things that I've enjoyed that I wouldn't go, "Oh, that's going to be good." But if it's on, if I'm in the area, you know, I go to see it. Like the Natural History Museum, it's not something I'm like, "Yes, we have to go to this location and see the Natural History Museum." But if I do happen to be right next to the Natural History Museum, I'm like, why not, eh?
No.
Why not?
If you've not seen this, I wouldn't waste your time. It was terrible.
I think it was fun. But we've got episode 3 coming up, which is going to be interesting. It's the one that I remember the least out of, like, the menu that was on the DVD we're watching. So, oh gosh, we may be in for a little bit of a roller coaster with that one. I don't know who the guest is, but we will see. So, thank you so much. Now, community news, I don't think there is much, except for the fact that we're treading on with our reviews or interview series. This is going to be scheduled to go out on the Monday. I'm going to try and do all these for a Monday. So if that is the case, then our interview with Stephanie DeBruzo would have just released. And that was the voice of Velma. Definitely a better voice of Velma than the one we've witnessed in this episode. But also the puppeteer for Velma in the Mystery Map movie. So that is really cool. You know, for all I might not be a champion of the Mystery Map movie, I do think that interview is one of the strongest ones we've ever done. So I'm really happy with that again. You know, we've got Bob Singer, Stephanie DeBruzo. So far, the third and final season of the Scooby Doo interviews is looking to be the best one ever. So you don't want to miss that. Can you think of any other community news?
I guess we've never talked about the fact, like, or at least we used to do this in community news, but more kind of like announcements like Neil Fanning's coming to the UK.
Oh, stop it.
Asda have just released a really cool Scooby Doo jumper for Halloween that's like trick or treat with Shaggy and Scooby underneath. That's really cool.
If we decide to see Neil Fanning, are we doing like a video of, like we did with Grey, like top 5 things we want to get signed, or in theory we would get signed and stuff like that?
Yeah, we'll be doing videos like that. There'll be an amazing vlog about the trip up to Scotland, all the Comic-Con and everything.
I want to look to see if he's doing a panel, you know, for Monopoly.
Do you think he'll fly the Scooby head out that he said he takes to every Comic-Con with him?
Oh, if he does, that would be crazy.
That would be cool.
That would be mad.
That'd be insane.
That'd be mad. But if he does a Q&A panel for that, I'm definitely going to record that.
This is going to be the first time we've met someone we've interviewed, right?
Oh, let me think. Yeah, well, you know what? It will be, because when else would that have happened?
That's insane.
Do you think it'll be awkward? Because obviously, like with Grey, we've spoken to her, but we've not like interviewed her like that.
I don't know, you know.
Do you reckon he'll recognise us? Because we've spoken. He's actually been ridiculously nice. Like, I kind of find like myself like fanboying, because there's moments where I look on Instagram and he's liked like the Scooby Doo collectibles that we've posted like in the past, and so I'm kind of like, stop it. I'm like, I'm gonna cry.
You fanboying.
Like, it's mad. I was gonna say something crazy then, but it's ridiculous.
It's hard not to like remember being a kid watching Scooby compared to where we are now. Like, you get moments where it hits you. Like, I'd say we're pretty composed in the interview, but when we interviewed Jennifer Hale, I slipped for a second.
Yeah, like if you told me that we'd have like a Hex Girl and Scooby Doo in our like DMs just talking generally about stuff, like I would never have believed you. I'd have gone, no, whoever you are, you look like me, that's put on an incredible amount of weight, like whoever you are, go out of here, you crazy, crazy person, you. I don't know, that's mad. I don't know why I said that.
What's going on with you?
I don't know what's going on. But yeah, that is it, I think, unless there's something else we can think of. But let us know what you thought about a mystery-solving group. I don't know if I've got that right. Divided. Let us know if you would smash or pass it, or even just a review, like a out of 10. We'd love to hear that. And also, what you think about some of the episodes that we should look out for in the first season of Scooby Doo and Guess Who. Make sure to subscribe for more, and we'll see you next time.